Good morning, everybody. Just checking in, want to make sure you can hear me okay. Somebody can just let me know. Excellent. Thank you very much. So good to see you all. Welcome to Intro to Buddhism and Meditation. Um, for those of you here for the first time, welcome for the first time. I always like to start out just with a little bit of a question. Just a couple reasons. It gives some time for our millions of YouTube followers to log on. And second, to just get you all used to communicating with each other. I know a lot of you know each other and spent many years or weeks or months together. Some of you here for the first time. So just good to kind of communicate a little bit. Uh, so, question for today. Let's see. How about do you often find yourself doing things that you realize there's probably more important things you should be doing with your time? I know this is kind of a simple yes and no question, but it just popped into my head doing my run this morning that often we find ourselves, and this kind of was triggered from a conversation I had, but you know, often people complain about not enough time or not doing things they like to do, and um, very often we maybe spend hours a day doing things that are really just not that important. And don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of resting the mind and doing things that are relaxing and things like that. So I don't want to come across as if we always have to be on the go and doing something. But I think more often than not, from my experience and working with people, um, and then we tend to talk about how we wish we had more time for things, or we never got to do this, or never got to do that. And often the time that we spend is doing things really not that important. Um, so again, the question, and for those of you who maybe are new, to YouTube or new to joining us, there's a chat box somewhere on your screen there, and you can just type in your response, yes, no. Um, and this question is pretty much a yes or no question, but feel free to share anything else you'd like. Again, do you find yourself doing things often that really are just a waste of time? And we'll take a few minutes for people to kind of share, and then we'll go ahead and get started with the meditation practice every day. Yeah. And I'm a fan of the Zen expression, when hungry, eat, when tired, sleep. To me, the way I interpret that is it's just a matter of, being present with what we're doing. And, I think there's a balance that's important. And Buddhism teaches a lot about the middle path. And I laughed this morning because I saw Vicky. Many of you know Vicky, and a dear friend of mine, and she posted something about watching SpongeBob and not having the capacity to do much more than that on a Saturday morning. And I think things like that are important, to find that balance, especially if you're someone who works all week or really pushes yourself a lot, to have that downtime, so to speak, and again to settle into that middle path, that life of not too many extremes. Um, Anything else? Do you find yourself doing things that often you could be doing something that's more important? And a lot of it at times, I think, is the recognition of what's important in our lives, who's important in our lives, um, and where do we spend our time. And even in a time like this, where A lot of people are pretty isolated and quarantined at home, and hopefully not going too many places at all. We're somewhat limited, but there are still things and ways to connect with other people that are necessary. So a real question is to ponder, how well are you using the time that you have? And where many of us are so used to living a life that was so swamped with seemingly 24-hour day, many people now find themselves with a lot of free time, a lot of time on their hands. And I think it's important to be diligent and try not to waste too much time. So, all right, so with that, we'll go ahead and get started with the meditation practice. For those who are new or maybe joining for the first time, there's a couple things I'll tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working? Is it not working? Am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? We're just going to sit, we're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside the room, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos, and the practice of meditation is learning to get quiet and still within all of from it. If you are brand new to meditation, it's important to understand that your mind will not shut off. You will not think nothing. You will not go blank. We're just going to sit and breathe for a period of time. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, it often helps slide into the front third, pushing your stomach forward, allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed, hands can be on the knees or in the lap, whatever is comfortable. Mouth will be open or closed, whatever is comfortable. Open or closed, whatever is comfortable. I will guide us as we begin, and we will settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, don't expect anything from this practice but to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Again, mouth open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus, to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply going to continue this practice, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. And as the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it, release that thought, return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in, follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. Where's your mind? Lost in thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. keeping the mind alert, aware of each sound, each thought, each physical sensation, yet concerned, but sitting, breathing. Letting go of expectations, letting go of judgment, just sitting, breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, wanting nothing but to sit and breathe. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle, know what it's like to just sit and breathe. knowing with each breath there's nothing else to do, nowhere else to go, no one else to be. Everything beautiful, just as it is, sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly begin to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you'd prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being no different than any one of us who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means very simply for all of us, regardless of where we come from or what we believe in or where we think we're going, our whole lives are filled with things that happen. We react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. That's what we get. This practice is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you feel right now is quite different from how you felt 20 minutes ago. All we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy, it's not necessarily fun, but it's free. Meditation is free, Buddhist practice is free, Sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and everybody else you encounter. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything around us, and we work on changing our mind and our reaction to the world around us, life gets simpler. But it's a practice, not an easy one. It requires a lot of effort. It requires being very honest with where you're at on your journey in life. It requires less time being lazy. It requires less wasted time. It's really, for me, Buddhism has been the hardest thing I've ever had to do, which is interesting because a lot of people come to meditation or Buddhist practice thinking that, well, I'm just going to do the Buddhist thing, and that means I'm just going to sit and meditate and everything's going to be fine. Well, if the world's a mess and you sit and meditate, the world is still a mess. But when you sit and you practice and you become less attached to yourself and your ego and your pride and everything that you think is so important about you, you become more aware of what's going on in the world around you. And therefore, you engage in it. And often, when we think about ourselves less, we think about others more. And we begin to recognize how can we make a difference in this world in the short time that we have. Because life does pass quickly, and we don't know when it ends. So I'd rather just stop there. And as always, I'd prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. And we use the rest of the time today for me to respond to your questions or thoughts. And if you are new to joining us, again, welcome. There's a chat box somewhere on your screen there, and you can just type in your questions and I'll go ahead and respond. So I'll turn it over to that right now. Don't watch the news. Good morning, Cynthia. I don't watch the news, not on any social media. The negative still seems to filter through. Is this dukkha at its finest? Well, it's important to understand that the news is not dukkha. And let me back up and define that just for those who might not know. The word dukkha is translates to suffering. And the Buddhist teachings, the first thing he said is life is filled with dukkha. Suffering, it's not the best translation into the English language because suffering sounds so heavy and traumatic. It can be discomfort, it can be angst, dissatisfaction. Favorite story to tell is if somebody here doesn't like mayonnaise and you order a sandwich and you tell them no mayo and then you get mayonnaise on your sandwich, that's dukkha. You don't like it. So the mayonnaise isn't dukkha. The sandwich isn't dukkha. Those things in and of themselves are not the suffering. The suffering is your response to the mayonnaise. So again, if you look at the nature of your question, the way I read it, and I'll pretend that I don't know you, is that you're saying the news itself is the dukkha. Well, that's like saying the mayonnaise is the dukkha. The news is just the news. You choose how you want to respond to it. If it triggers suffering in you, then you experience dukkha. Dukkha experience. It's not an object. It's not a thing. It's not a story. It's not a person. It's an experience. So for you, that has some news filter through that causes suffering, then yes, you are suffering because of the news. Now you can watch news on happy, joyful things, and that doesn't make the news happy and joyful. Your response to it is what makes it happy and joyful or dukkha, suffering, discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction. But either way, ultimately, what this is about, And this is really, as you know, what the practice is reaching a place in your life where every little story, every little event, every little piece of news, every little everything doesn't impact you so deeply. This is spiritual practice. Yes, I'm a huge fan, and you've heard me talk about this for years, and I know you've done it for a while now too. Of if the news drives you crazy, don't spend 8 hours a day watching the news. I mean, to me, that's common sense. We do a lot of work in the recovery community, and for someone battling addiction, hanging out at bars is probably not the best place to be. So if the news is a huge trigger for you, then yes, watch less news or watch almost no news. But ultimately, Cynthia, the real question is how and when do you get to a place where you could watch news and it doesn't impact you? And when I say doesn't impact you, for those who don't know me or don't know I really how I really operate, I'm not saying that you ignore it and you become immune to it. If you see things on the news that you don't like, then create change. If you see people on the news you like, then create change. I'm not saying to ignore what's happening on the news, but do not let it destroy you. Ultimately, you should be able to watch the news all day long and have it motivate you and inspire you if you don't like what you're seeing to create change. To me, that's practice. As I always say, I'm a big fan of, not watching the news, especially if you can't handle it, but that's avoiding it. That's turning your back on it. That's saying, I can't handle this. But the practice is being able to handle whatever gets thrown your way. And that's what equanimity is. Watch the news, see what's going on, and use it to motivate you and inspire you to be a better human being, which I know you do. I'm just talking in general right now. So, different from how I usually respond, which is stay away from news, watch the news and see how to work with it. People often ask me, do I think, which what I think about what the Buddha would have done is really irrelevant, but the questions of do I think the Buddha would have used social media comes up a lot. And people say, oh, social media is a waste and the Buddha never would have used it. And I've heard people talk about it that way. And personally, I disagree. I think that he would have used it as a positive tool to transform and help people change their lives, which is what Buddhism is really all about. But 2,500 years ago, he walked from place to place to place to share the Dharma. Now, today, we have a tool where I can sit here in the middle of nowhere and stare at these silly little screens and I can share a message with you. Now, imagine the ability for someone who is fully enlightened and can help you and your suffering with that same tool at his or her disposal. I think that would be a phenomenal tool. So, the problem is not social media, the problem is not the news. The problem is our mind and our ability to handle this information. And that's where the real work begins. So, just some thoughts, Cynthia. Um, yeah. Other thoughts, questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. How often should meditation be practiced? Well, let me ask you this, John, first. Are you brand new to meditation? Is this possibly the first time you've done meditation? Let me start with that question. Fairly new. So, my response is the same. I just was curious to see where you were coming from. Um, the question one should ask themselves is, how often do I brush my teeth? And most people that I know brush their teeth every day. It's 3 times a day. We wake up in the morning, we're tired, there's a million things to do. We've got our coffee, we got to get dressed, we got to get out of the house, there's a fire, who knows what. But we still sit there and brush our teeth, right? As if it's the end of the world if we go into the world without our teeth being brushed. Take care of your mind the same way. You wouldn't go 3 weeks without brushing your teeth, so why go 3 weeks without taking care of your mind? Most of our minds have been a mess our entire lives, and now we're trying to take care of it. And to do that, we must do it on a regular basis. I'm a huge fan of suggesting that you do meditation every single day. Now, I'm not a fan of saying do it for 20, 30, 40 minutes because realistically, especially if you're new, it's not going to happen. If I told you, John, you need to sit for 30 minutes every single day, it's probably not practical. But if I said, John, sit every day for 3 minutes, that's more realistic. It goes from 0% up to like 0.1%, and I like those odds. So do this every single day. It doesn't need to be a big event. You don't need to go to a class. You don't need to pay money. You don't need to light a bunch of incense. You don't need to buy candles. You don't need to do anything. You just need to sit down, close your eyes if you would like, and breathe. You don't need anything to do meditation. You don't need an app. You don't need a guide. You just need you and your crazy mind, which is always with you. No offense on the crazy mind, of course. Just speaking to myself. So it should be done every single day. I suggest people do it first thing when they wake up. Get up, splash water in your face, brush your teeth, sit down for 3, 5 minutes, however long you want, and just close your eyes and take breaths. Nighttime, if you have trouble sleeping, which many people do the same thing. Do it for a few minutes before you go to sleep. So make it routine, make it consistent. And then if you want to sit longer, that's great. If you want to sit 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 40 minutes, that's fine. There's not any longer. But it should be done every day. Does that help, John? And don't judge it. Don't ask yourself like, well, was this a good meditation or a bad meditation? You're just sitting and breathing. So as long as you complete sitting and breathing, then you've done it successfully. If you stop breathing, then well, you don't have to worry about your meditation anymore. Other questions? Uh, I was just going to add real quick, people can complicate meditation as well, John. There's a billion types of meditation. There's YouTube, Google, everything out there. Don't complicate it. Just sit, close your eyes, and take some breaths. Chuck, good morning, my friend. Recently, I've had the most difficult time ever just leaving my mind alone while sitting. It wanders really fast after only 1 or 2 breaths. Any suggestions for my practice? Yeah, I mean, I think similar to what I just said is, it's one thing I think to observe it and be aware of it as you are. It's another to kind of judge it and critique it. So, recently, if it's been difficult to just kind of sit and allow the mind to settle, then just know maybe it's difficult right now. But I wouldn't force it to change. When my guess is you probably aren't doing your meditation practice any differently than you were when it was, maybe to use other words, a little easier. If this is a difficult time, then maybe it was easier before. And again, my guess is your meditation isn't different. So the challenge in meditation and the difficulties we have in meditation really have nothing to do with the meditation aspect of it itself. It has to do with our life outside of what we call seated meditation. So very often our lives are more hectic or more stressful or more emotional or more angry or more sad or more depressed or whatever it might be. Or we just spend 3 hours watching the news and then we want to sit down and meditate. So I would maybe look at, if you're having a greater sense of, difficulty or challenges when you're sitting and breathing, um, I'd look at what you're doing outside of your meditation practice. Because I think when we sit and try to still the mind and allow everything to settle, uh, we get to see a pretty good reflection of what's going on in our head. And obviously, if yours is jumping and racing and wandering really fast, then that might be what's going on outside of meditation. So I'd address that first and see if that changes things. Otherwise, just sit and be with it until it's no longer that way. But again, I'm not a fan of like shifting meditation practice to try to get a different result. I'm a fan of using meditation to observe what's actually going on in our minds and our brains and in our thoughts. So hope that helps. Other questions? Yes, thank you. I have the feeling that I'm out of balance with work, and yeah, definitely. It's usually that way that, again, I'm repeating myself, but usually whatever's happening outside of meditation, like I said, like a still pond or a mirror, our meditation practice is a reflection of our lives. So if you feel like I'm not talking to you, Chuck, just to anybody, if you feel meditation is a mess, and I say that if your mind is a mess, meditation doesn't fix it. It actually just makes you become aware of it. So if you're new to meditation, for John or anybody else who might be fairly new, don't think that meditation is going to drastically change your life. It's just going to make you become aware of your life. And if your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, your life will not change from meditation. You will become aware of your life from meditation, then you must change your life. So that's why people always ask me, I've been doing this every day for 17 years, and people say, has anything ever happened to you in meditation? I say, no, nothing. I'm not trying to be like humble or modest or anything like that. Like nothing's ever happened. I just sit and breathe and watch my mind. But has my life changed drastically? Yes, but not because of meditation. It's because of what I'm doing outside of meditation. That's what changes your life. And the meditation has helped me see it. And as the Buddha suffer because of greed, anger, ignorance. That's what the cause of our dukkha, our suffering is. We're greedy, we want more, we're angry at the way things are, and we're ignorant, thinking that our views are correct. And the meditation practice is an incredible time to still and slow everything down so you can see how greedy are you, how angry are you, and how ignorant are you. And that's where I said at the beginning that your meditation practice and Buddhist practice is the most difficult thing because it forces you to reflect on, oh, wow, maybe I'm not. And that's takes a lot of courage, and you got to be brave to really challenge yourself to be a better human being. What books do you recommend for someone new to Buddhism? For me, I always suggest the same one as a beginner's book for Buddhism. It's called Lotus in a Stream, and it's a intro to Buddhism book written by Master Xing. It's out of print, so you can get them used on Amazon. But it takes all the basic teachings of the Buddha, the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, dependent origination, karma, rebirth, all these kind of buzz words and teachings and concepts in Buddhism, and sums them up in about 10 to 15 pages. So I think that's a perfect book for introduction to Buddhism. Other thoughts, questions? Are we trying to feel more peace, gain enlightenment, or both? I would suggest not trying to do any of those things. just practice, and I mean that very seriously. Like for me, the study and practice of Buddhism has never been to try and feel something or to try to gain something. And I'll kind of break these down a little bit, but um, if you want to feel more peace, then it's only going to happen by your actions, which are your karma. Karma means action. It's what we think, what we say, and what we do. That's why we always say, think good thoughts, speak good, what we think, what we say, and what we do. So if we want to, as you say, feel more peace, then we have to change our actions. But one doesn't feel more peace just by trying to feel more peace. One will feel more peace by doing less of the things that make you feel less peaceful. So, if you're a stressed out person and you say, well, I'm going to sit down and meditate to get rid of my stress, and you sit down and you say, get rid of stress, get rid of stress, get rid of stress, and all you're focused on is your stress. If you tell yourself, feel more peace, I mean, you can't, to me, it's not about telling yourself how to feel or what to be. It's actually being different, doing different. But I wouldn't look at feeling more peace as like the subjective or the goal. I'd look at it more as maybe a side effect of if you are a kinder, gentler person, then you'll probably be more peaceful, and more peaceful is a beautiful thing. The second thing, as far as gaining enlightenment, the words enlightenment and nirvana are so, I think, just dangerous words, even though that's seemingly what it's all about is, to awaken, to be enlightened, to enter into nirvana, um, especially in a Western culture, man, giving Western culture people these ideas of something that they have to accomplish or gain or get to, I think is very dangerous because it, then there's this idea that you have to accomplish something. And, this isn't like ki- kindergarten to first grade to second grade up trying to get to. The Buddha taught very clearly that nirvana and samsara, right, which is the cycle of rebirth or endless suffering, and nirvana, which is liberation, freedom from suffering, are both the same. Meaning they're right here, right now, right? It's not like you leave your house and go 3 hours north and turn right. They all exist right here, right now. So you don't gain mint. The idea is that you're already enlightened. You're just not aware of it. It's nothing to gain. It's more of a ridding of. So if you think of the metaphor I always use, was the sun on a cloudy day, right? If the clouds are out, you can't see the sun, but the sun is still there. You just can't see it. And once the clouds part, there's the sun. So those clouds are the greed, the anger, ignorance. So instead of like taking this effort and this like aggressive attacking effort of like, I'm going to go be more peaceful, I'm going to gain enlightenment, just look at what a mean, angry person you are, or a greedy person you are, or an egotistical person you are, or a prideful person you are, or a selfish person you are. I would look at all of those things um, very honestly. And when you look at those things, what you're left with is that shining sun. But most of us have a lot of layers of peeling away. Um, and if you take this idea of like, I'm alive and I am this and I need to get to enlightenment, in the next 3 years, then you're never going to get there because that in and of itself is this view that you have somewhere to go. And just be present and be kind. Uh, so hopefully that's helpful. Isn't losing cloud cover? Hang on, there's like three questions up there. Let's see. Isn't losing cloud cover gaining sunlight? Yeah, that's my point. But you didn't get it. The Buddha taught very clearly that we are all already awakened. It's called bodhicitta, Buddha nature, that we all already have it. All the conditions for awakening you already have. We are all already awakened. We're just not aware of it. So the way you phrase the question of is it something that we have to gain, meaning the way I read that is it something that you have to go get and acquire? And what the Buddha taught is you already have it. You don't need to gain it. You have to get rid of your pride, get rid of your ego, get rid of your attachments to self. All the things that cause suffering for you and others, get rid of those, and the sun will shine that's already there. So hopefully that's helpful. Um, Samir just thought, do you think 2020 has provided an escape for starting or practicing meditation? We're all stuck at home with our thoughts. I mean, I think that, 2020, 1960, um, 1810, I think every day is a perfect landscape for starting or practicing meditation. I understand that, the common sense or the logical way of trying to justify or rationalize all the craziness we're in is to say, like, okay, well, I'm going to turn this nightmare of a year into developing a meditation practice, because it's forcing me to deal with our thoughts and fears, and the world is chaotic. Well, I hate to not just use Samir because I know we've had this dialogue, but to everybody, 2019, the world was chaotic. 1919, the world was chaotic. Pick a year, pick a day. The world has always been chaotic. People have always had fears. People have always had crazy racing minds. Um, and it's always been the perfect day to start a meditation practice. So is it worse at times, potentially, depending upon how you view it? And of course, obviously with the pandemic, then yeah, of course. Um, so on a very simple, I think, conventional level, then you can say, yes, 2020 is a perfect landscape for starting or practicing meditation. Um, but, if and when the time comes that all of this is behind us, and it's whatever time in the future, and you say, isn't now the perfect time to start a meditation practice? I'm always going to say yes. Every day, every moment we deal with our emotions, and I think every day is an opportunity to start a meditation practice. Beside Dharma Bum practitioners, are there current Buddhist teachers that you recommend listening to? Yeah, I think there's a lot of great Buddhist teachers out there. I'm a big fan of uh, Thanissaro Bhikkhu. Ajahn Jeff has a lot of talks up there. He's the abbot at Metaforest Monastery, Theravada Buddhist teacher. Um, I'm a big fan of Koshin. He's a kind of, lives in New York. We hosted him a couple years ago, now maybe a year and a half ago. He's a Zen teacher out in New York. I'm a big fan of his, Koshin Paley Ellison. I share a lot of his stuff on Instagram and Facebook. Um, I think there's Sharon Salzberg is a wonderful teacher. Um, so I'm a fan of hers. I think that there's so many great Buddhist teachers out, um, and really the reality is just finding someone that you connect with, and I think that's most important. Um, and again, I mean, the Dharma Bum practitioners, as you say, and all Buddhist teachers out there, we're all just unenlightened folks doing our best to share our understanding of Buddhist teachings. So none of us are experts. None of us are perfect in our practice. None of us are perfect in sharing the Dharma. Every individual that I mentioned and those I didn't mention are all doing their best to share their understanding of Buddhist teaching. At the same time, still working on their own practice. So that's important too. If you find the teacher out there that says, they're the enlightened one and they figured it out and they'll be your guru and they'll charge you or whatever, then I would find somebody else. I've been contemplating the concept of resilience lately. I'm curious to know what resilience means to you in your practice, Buddhist practice. Yeah, good question. And I'll the resilience. I talked about this Tuesday night, maybe, or last Saturday, but I touch on this pretty regularly, even though I hadn't in a while. But when the Buddha died, so he born a prince, 35 years old. He left home, roamed the base of the Himalayan mountains for 45 years, teaching. And or I'm sorry, 29 left home. 35, they called him the awakened one, the Buddha. And then for 45 years, he roamed around India teaching, and he died at 80. And so here's this, incredible human being who, when all of his disciples were distraught because they were thinking, oh no, who's going to teach us now? He said, look, I've left you all the teachings. You must be a lamp unto yourself and be diligent. Strive on with diligence. So to me, resilience often lack is resiliency or diligence, because we get lazy, we get defeated physically, mentally, emotionally, and often kind of throw in the towel. And for me, it's interesting that the Buddha chose that as his last teaching. If you've got someone who's really wise as a friend and you want to know, like, what do they want to tell you on their way out the door? You say goodbye to somebody. What do they want to say? And I think that his practice on diligence is so critical and so brilliant. And again, to me, ties very much into resilience that your life, and often, again, I don't fully understand everything behind that question, but if I had to read into it a little bit, when we face challenges and difficulties in our lives and we have mental, emotional, physical trauma, it requires us to dig deep, so to speak, and kind of be resilient and keep going, keep fighting the good fight, as they say, and keep pushing and keep standing up for what you believe and all those types of things. And I think that diligence and again the practice of right effort in the Eightfold Path is what it means to be resilient. And the last thing I'll say on that, which is a whole another topic, but the other thing about being resilient is if you look at it from the standpoint of what I just shared, where you've had challenges, you've had difficulties physically, mentally, emotionally, you've experienced trauma, you feel like your pride, your ego, all those things have been shattered and destroyed and beaten up, and you want to just kind of keep being resilient and keep going. Um, Understand that that story you're telling yourself is just a story. And the more you stick to the story about feeling this need to be resilient, the more you're going to need to be resilient. The less you stick to the story, um, then you can just be present with occur. And this idea of having to be resilient kind of goes away because you're just present with what's happening. And to me, that's one way of looking at the teaching of non self, which I know at the very end here is the wrong time to bring this up. Maybe tune in next week and I can talk more about this idea of non self and really this idea of resiliency going away because you're just present with things as they occur and not carrying the stories of things that are driving you to feel like you must be resilient. So, Marie said, thank you. Yes, Tanisar Biku, Ajahn Jeff Koshin, and Sharon Salzberg. And they're wonderful. Um, I may have just lost sound. I don't know. Let me just put this on here. So we'll go ahead and we'll close on that. Uh, and I'll join palms as we do a transfer of merit. Not even sure if you can all hear me anymore, but we'll do this anyways. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained be transferred to those who need it most. Thanks, Carla. A few quick announcements before y'all jump off. Thanks for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened the temple 14 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice. And those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. We have classes every night. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are on YouTube with Alex, Travis, and myself, and Saturday morning as well. And then everything else is on Zoom Monday through Friday in the mornings, 8 and 8:30. It's a great way. John, I think it was asked earlier about developing a practice. Every morning we sit. Our recovery classes are going on every night and on the weekends. Our college group, our teen group, and I believe our family kids group will start up again soon. We always break over the summer. So temple physically has been closed since March 12th because of the coronavirus, and we will continue to remain closed until we feel it's safe to bring community together. The Buddhist teaching on generosity, on dana, is the greatest way to overcome suffering, and we feel that the greatest gift we can give the community right now is keeping our doors closed and not putting anybody at risk of getting sick. So I don't feel as if we're taking anything away from anyone. I feel as if we're actually giving people the gift of safety by not bringing you together. I sit very well with that as our current situation with the Dharma Bum Temple. So thank you all for being here. If I never see you again, think good thoughts, speak good words, do good deeds, and please wear a mask, stay home, and be safe.